Welcome to the Hope and the Truth Testimony Podcast, brought to you by theculturalarts.org. Join our hosts, Lance Parvin and Jamie Morris, as they travel around the world to bring you testimony of those who have overcome adversity by accepting Jesus Christ. May God bless you and enjoy the show.
Wake up in the morning light, black is gone with the dead and I, Lord, I know.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Hope and the Truth. I hope you guys are having a blessed week, and it's an exciting show today, something a little bit different. You're going to mainly be hearing from Mr. Jamie Morris, my co-host. Good morning, Jamie. How are you feeling this morning?
Good morning. Feeling great.
Oftentimes, we'll do testimonies, and I think these are very important, not just because it shows a vulnerability in all of us, but it helps express the story and shows proof of concept of Christ in our life, right? A lot of times it's when we recite scripture, and for those who not yet believe, it might just be words, even though it's the power of God. But when someone can actually hear the story of, number one, that we weren't walking around in white gloves, that we all messed up, and sometimes when people don't know the old us, it's good to share with them just how far we've come based on the grace of God. So today, which is a very honor, I'm very grateful for this, Mr. Morris is going to share his testimony. You're not going to hear much of me. You hear a little bit of me. But you're going to hear more of him, and most importantly, you're going to hear the Lord, and that's what's important. So, Jamie, I appreciate you, number one, sharing with us today. I'm sure the audience loves this, and whenever you're ready, sir, good morning.
Good morning again. I got to say, speaking was never one of my my high points, my strengths. I grew up. I was a very lonely kid. Single mom, bartender. She loved me very much. I can't ever say that my mom didn't love me. But we had a little rough go from the start. Basically, when I was born without a thyroid gland, and nobody really knew that. This was in 1975. I'm 45 years old. So obviously science in 1945 is a little bit different. The medicine was a little different. So I almost died when I was a child. And, I made it through. I'm hypothyroid. I was born without a thyroid gland. So I've been taking medication ever since. It's kind of led to a lot of health problems throughout my life. But I've dealt with it, it's just part of my life. So, like I said, I never was comfortable with complaining about my life or anything like that. But, you take what you're given and you make the best of it. So, life goes on. And as I'm growing as a child, having a mom, a single mother, and many dads, we moved a lot. I guess around the ages of 8 to 14, around there. I don't want to be too graphic, but I did experience some, sexual misconduct, sexual abuse. I don't ever know what to call it. I just know it was a very uncomfortable part of my life, and I didn't know. I was always a quiet child. I've always felt lonely. I don't know why. Since I was a kid, I've always had a lonely feeling. And I don't know if that's because of just being a single child. And my mom was a bartender, so it was, she was always working and doing her thing. But that was normal life to me. So even like I said, I couldn't complain a lot. And, being quiet, and I didn't really say much about things that were happening. And so... you go through these experiences, and I kept growing, the 8 to 14, the junior high, moving around a lot. And then I moved out with my one of my cousins, and he was like a brother to me. And, teenage years, I'm a little quiet, but, the anger starts to, take over my life, I should say, because of experiences, also with my mom, like I said, I love her again, but, being a bartender in that lifestyle also was an alcohol and drug lifestyle. So, growing up with that also, you have anger, you have loneliness, the drug scene. And like I said, to me, it was like, hey, this is life. And I didn't know any other life. So I know a lot of people, they, kind of just look at you sideways when you sit there and talk about the life. And then I look at the same way, like, such as my wife and she, mom and dad and the family and hugs and kisses. And that was weird to me. It's funny how, the two sides look at how life is supposed to be lived. You got the I would call them silver spoon life or the wooden spoon life, So, I really didn't think much of it, and so, as I'm growing in the way that I know life, is like I said, the normalcy. So, like I said, the drug scene, loneliness, moving around a lot, it just kind of confuses you. When I look back now as a 45-year-old and I look back then, it's, wow. I look at other people's lives, and not that I'm trying to compare myself to anybody else, but, it's I don't know how to explain it. It's an interesting perspective now to see that life. And, with having children, when you try to like make sure that they don't make the same mistakes, but that's only in God's hands, their lives are in God's hands, and I can help guide them. And, I can tell them all the mistakes I made as a kid. But, hopefully they'll, like I said, God has them and I have faith that they'll be fine. So carrying on my teenage years, lots of confusion. Like I said, quiet. I had a problem with relationships. I had a problem with girls. I was just antisocial. And listen, I made a lot of friends. I've always been a nice person. I've just been nice, quiet. I never had a problem with, I went through fights, teenage years, you do dumb things and, you're fighting. That's how I actually started in the whole world of martial arts. To me, I look at it that way, by fighting. The area I grew up in, there was lots of different, like, little gangs, I guess you can call them, just little groups of people that like to fight, and you fought. We weren't like shooting guns or anything like that, but we raised hands back in the day, and that's how we did it. And I kept going, kept growing. Got involved with some light drugs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say light drugs. I guess at that time it was like weed and cocaine and some acid and whatever at the teenage years you kind of start getting involved with. But I guess to me it was like at that time it was teenage kid stuff, and plus my mom was a bartender, so that kind of life you kind of have an open situation. Well, that life kind of led me to my 18-year-old years into 19, and I committed armed robbery. Again, with being in the lifestyle I had, I also had access to guns. Unfortunately, I made some bad choices, and I did an armed robbery, and I wound up doing 4 years in prison because of that. You have any questions? No. The 4 years was, I'll tell you what, that was an eye-opener for me. The prison, you go from being a lonely single child and moving around all the time to now I'm stuck in prison, one space, with people I have never hung out with before. I had people from New York, North Jersey, South, like Atlantic City, different areas like this, and some real areas that were rough, and because I moved around a lot, I've always been able to get along with everybody. I lived in so many different conditions, from welfare. we moved around a lot. I slept on chairs. We slept at a lot of relatives' houses because we didn't have any places to stay. So I was kind of used to that life. I was never planted in one place. So prison was like, at that time, was the longest stay I'd ever been at one place. And that was like it was like college age, actually. You know, you figure I was like 18, I was like 19, I guess, when I got sentenced. And it was like college, 4 years of college, a whole different kind of college. Yeah, that taught me a lot of lessons, and it taught me a lot about people. I thought I knew a lot about people, and I think that we grow up in our own areas, and we think that we know the world by the area that we grew up with. And then if we don't get to get out in the world, we don't see any of the other world. And that was the thing about prison for me, because there was so much culture in prison. You don't realize how much culture there is. Obviously you have different kinds of gangs or organizations. You have, the Hispanic gangs like Nietas and the Latin Kings, the black organizations, maybe like 5%ers. You have different religious groups, Muslim and Christian groups and stuff. You have so many different people. I met so many people from Puerto Rico, Ponce, Guatemala, and I met a lot of Korean and Russian, and met so many people. I actually got to have fun learning different languages when I was there. So it was a learning experience, and that was amazing. It actually enriched my life to even to today. It's easier for me to just have conversations with people with those experiences because of the relationships that I gained through prison. I learned boxing. You get so many access for people who fight there. Gold glove fighters, Dominican fighters. I got to learn for 4 years how to box. So I learned how to box. The 4 years was an experience I did not want to go through again. And that was the thing about being in there for 4 years. You get to watch, unfortunately, people come in and out, and that vicious cycle of, prison, you go home, and then that goes back to the whole father, son, or daughter, father, that repetitive cycle of the parent not there and the child being left alone to, grow into what they do to end up in prison. And it's just that vicious cycle. So I really got to see that a lot in prison, watching son, father, grandfather in the same prison. It really wakes you up. So part of that is one of the reasons why I'd like to spend time working with people that have been incarcerated, or children that I'd hate to see incarcerated. I know they got a tough struggle, especially if their parents are in prison. See, after prison, I'm married. How many years? 20 years, somewhere around there. My wife was my pen pal when I was in prison. So that was, it's always an interesting story when I tell everybody, my wife was my pen pal, and I've been my wife ever since. I'm 45. I came home when I was like 23, 24, whatever it was, and she's been with me every step of the way. We have a house and two awesome children, 16 and 14. It's a blessing, but it's not without trouble either, because with everything that happened through my life, even things that maybe I haven't talked about or expressed over this one, and some, like I said, obviously some people have, I'm going to reveal most, but some things I will, keep to myself, but these are things that, I've learned to grow with. And I've actually, used these things as I've gone through as a father, taken the pains and the glories that I've had as a child into a teenager and into prison, and try to, pass that along as a father. But, even I really look at it now. I look at myself and I look back at my mom, and we had talked about this in an off discussion about how parents and kids, and that generational swap, hey, remember, I'm going to tell you this, and you remember this when you're a parent, you know. So it's one of those things, and yeah, it's an interesting thing being a parent. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, we do our best to be parents, but we still have those things that we struggle with, and to really kind of backtrack. And all this time, I didn't have God. I didn't have Jesus in my life at this time through all of these things. And somebody had said to me not too long ago, you know, you've been all these things. You were a Muslim, you were a Jew, you were a Buddhist, and you know, yeah, I practice a lot of different things. I've had different stepfathers in my lives. I've had an Arabic stepfather, I had a Jewish stepfather. I had when I was in prison, I found Buddhism. But the fact is, obviously, they didn't stick because they weren't the truth. And you know, when you try and when you find it, you'll know it. And that's where I'm at. This is where I'm at this point in my life. But it didn't get here easy, you know. And even as an adult, after surviving what I did as a kid, surviving prison, surviving getting married and having kids, you know, a lot of those things, if you know, you're still struggling with these things on a private level. And I spent so many years, the past 6-7 years, struggling because I didn't take care of some of those things that I didn't really want to whine about to people, you know, because nobody wants to hear you whine. Who wants to hear about your story, you know? So I just kept them to myself, and I kept on just deteriorating and got depressed. And then all this time, while this was going on, I'm like, I'm the coach. I'm assisting everybody. I'm being super dad, and I am just trying to put on this big old smile and this big facade. But I was just still the saddest and the most depressed person that I know. I was that person that it was lonely in a crowded room, and I've always kind of felt that way. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to ask for help because there weren't many people that went through what I did, and it's hard to have a conversation with somebody who can't relate. And you know, luckily, you know, and that's kind of in the position I am now. I'm saying all of these things because there are other people out there that don't have anybody to relate to. And this is my time to tell you that if you need somebody that you need that can relate to you, that I'm one of those people. And I think this organization is full of people with these experiences and stories that can help, and you know, and maybe bring that out of you, maybe bring that sadness out of you, and kind of open up, you know, and we're all going to guide you to the Lord, but it's never going to be easy. You know, I mean, obviously, accepting the Lord is one thing, but getting to the point where you can see that light, that was the thing for me. So, like I said, in these years that I was struggling, trying to find that truth, I kept denying the things that I didn't want to say. I guess I look at them as like a sacrifice. You know, I didn't want to sacrifice anything. I wanted to live in the world. And I just kept on trying to put a blanket on the problem. So it would be, you know, let me be happy in front of everybody else. And I'm going to, you know, I crawled into painkillers for a long time because I got an injury. And given all this, I succeeded after I went from prison. I went from an electrician to a lineman to supervisor of the power company. I'm making big money. My wife's got her own company. We're in glory. This is the life. We had money, going on vacation. I was flying to Vegas, California, wherever, you know, we were just enjoying life. But I still was miserable, sad, and lonely. And none of that, the money, nothing was doing it for me. So again, you know, I needed something. So, like I said, the painkillers made me feel better. For a little while, I should say, you know, you take those painkillers, your back's feeling better, you're happy, And then you get caught in that cycle where I need to be happy. I had to take these pills to be happy. Hey, I'm happy now. What do I need any salvation for? The pills are my salvation. But eventually that salvation runs thin and it's not enough anymore. So you go to the next thing. And for me, it was crystal meth. I was like, oh, great. Now I'm done with the painkillers. No more opioids. Woo. Now we can go to meth. And that was the greatest thing at the time, too, because you know what? I was happy. I was smiling. I could have conversations with people. But again, like anything else, it's just a little temporary blanket that you just throw over you. It's a crutch. And it's not even a good crutch because it, continues to destroy your body just like the painkillers did. And, and then with all that, then you have shame. You're thinking of, what am I doing? I'm so stuck in this void, this darkness. And the only time I felt like I could see any kind of light was when I got high. And it wasn't to get high to just like, hey, I'm partying, woo. This was to feel normal. And there's something real wrong with that, you need a chemical to feel normal. And it had been so long since I felt normal. And then, I always look back and what is normal? I don't know what normal is, because I never felt normal up until now, I should say. But, the drugs, the depression, the loneliness, the things that nobody could fill, it led to multiple suicide attempts. And I just, when it comes to suicide, I've known many people who have tried to commit suicide. And I've always asked myself, why? How do you know when you come to that point when suicide is the way? When I've known many people, it's like, what was that driving factor that finally pushed you over the edge? And when I got to that point where I started asking myself that more often, and then I got to the point finally when I first did it, I knew that feeling. And then the next time was easier to have that numbness because I had just numbed myself to oblivion where there is no empathy. There was no nothing. I could look at my wife and look at my children and I didn't know. I did. It just was just this. It was like looking at a nightstand or a table that had no meaning to it. And even though subconsciously I believe that, I know I love my kids and my wife, but anybody, I look at now and like, man, you think you were so selfish. I was like, oh, I'm so selfish and stuff. And people sit there, oh, you're selfish. But, I just was in some pain. I was in a lot of pain. And just, I just couldn't find the answer. And I think the final time that I tried to kill myself, I don't know what it was. Perhaps it was the Lord. The last time I tried, I did a whole lot of crystal meth in one shot, purposely. And I just waited. I wanted to die. I wanted to sit on my couch. And fortunately, my wife and kids came home. I know it's horrible. And I walked upstairs and I looked at my wife. I'm like, I need you to take me to the hospital. Because somewhere around that time, something just told me, you need to stop. This can be okay. Let's start over. I needed to start over and I needed to find out another way. So, my wife took me. I started to get some help. I actually went to a psychiatrist for a little bit, or a therapist, whatever. And I did that for a little while. And unfortunately, it was nice, but it didn't really work with therapists. And this is an opinion of mine. Maybe not everybody will agree, but the the person was like 25 years old. And basically she was reading off whatever the book said for her to, give me the, this is what you should do. And she had no idea of my life. And I just didn't feel comfortable. It just felt, like just a regular doctor visit, So I knew there was something. I knew there was more. I kind of like stopped looking for the answer. And then actually, it came to me. I went on a trip. I've been a lifelong martial artist. I trained Filipino martial arts. My teacher's out in Vegas, and I went out for a visit with my teacher and my friend Lance Parvin over here, and my other teacher, Guru Dino Flores, and lots of family. And we wound up going to Utah for a nice little wine and eating some good food. And it's funny, I joke with everybody that I found God in Utah. Something just came over me. I wasn't looking, but God spoke to me in Utah. It's kind of like I said, I jokingly say that, but literally God spoke to me in Utah. And that was last August, I believe. And each day I've been learning the Lord, learning more about God, learning more scripture, and learning to live the way the Lord wants me to live. And that has brought me to this point in my life. So where now I'm doing a podcast, coming from multiple religious backgrounds to an atheist, now to a Christian. So here I am now, hoping the truth.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. That's powerful. And, I think it's important to share and for other people to hear of our backgrounds because, number one, it's through experience that we can better give information. I can't talk to you about adultery in truth, obviously it being wrong, but understanding the stuff you're struggling with. Same thing with alcoholism, same thing with drug abuse. So we'll go through stuff to be better relatable. Now, the Lord knows us inside and out, and even in our situations that are difficult, as we all have, they're still purposed. And it's not just for our growth, but when we can look back and understand who was keeping us, even when we didn't know the Lord and we're doing whatever we wanted like heathen, we truly understand what patience is. Forget how man defines any of this stuff, but what actual patience is, that the Lord, before creation, knew our walk from beginning to end, meaning sometimes we'll mess up and be like, well, Lord, you can't forgive me, not realizing that he already forgave you and already knew the completion of your life. So he's not surprised. We end up getting surprised. And I think you made a very interesting, valid point. Why we share experience is the concept of filling a void or chasing the dragon. Normally that's associated with heroin use. But in reality, chasing the dragon, it's the illusion that these things will provide fullness in your life, whether that's women, drugs, alcohol, money, all of these things outside of Christ. And if you can share your testimony having gone through these things, whether you have lots of money, whether you had lots of women, whether you had lots of drugs, and you're telling from experience, this will not fulfill you, to a person that's getting started in that or in the midst of it, and that there is a way. It's interesting in I believe it's John 16, but where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's not another option. It's the truth. And that's when you fill this void that all of us have with truth, not with evaporating wine. In reality, if I can compare it as such, he told a woman at the well, the water that I give you will never run out. It's a fountain of water that keeps on springing up from eternal life. The water that you're seeking, you're going to keep on being thirsty again. And I find that very interesting when we look at what we try to fill ourselves with outside of food and drink, that it's like a bottomless pit. No matter how much you put in, there's more. And sometimes that leads to another thing to put in. I'll get popcorn and soda. It's more stuff. And so we have to remember what we're, as individuals, are saved from. And too often, as we continue on your walk, whether you're new to Christ or you've been with him for 20 years, don't forget the concept of mercy. Because of ourselves, we didn't save ourselves. But the Lord knew the perfect timing to grab us. He coordinates events. We still have a choice. He's not a God of force. But when you can look back and have, that's what he said, ask for understanding and wisdom, he'll give it freely. And you can understand that these conglomerate of events that have transpired in your life were of no accident. They have a bigger purpose. And when you can appreciate that through understanding, not through man's understanding, but through actual understanding of why you went through stuff and how it's not just helped in your development, but for others, you're no longer complaining. You're grateful. There's not this murmuring heart like, Lord, why did you take this? Why did I die? It's like, here's why you didn't die. You have a purpose. Here's why your family showed up at this exact moment. Here's what, because again, we can be told something time and time again. We all know this. And until we go through experience, then we're like, I got it now. So that's where testimony really comes in for others, because out of love, you're sharing it, not forcefully. Because if someone doesn't want to hear it, that's okay. It's still a seed that's sown. Because what's funny enough with my co-host and myself is that when Christ got me, I was a hot mess. Not just a mess, it was a hot mess. And so I broke all the commandments, as I've talked about it, and this is not about me. But when I had sowed that seed for Jamie, certain times I was probably a little pushy, just out of love. But over the course of time, it wasn't on my time. And we all have to remember this, is that when our intent should not be measured on what we think a person's response is going to be, because God gives the increase. It's not us. We just sow seeds, water them. Where one sowed, we reap. And that's been happening throughout the course of time, where the prophets sown, the apostles reaped, and so on for us, where they sowed in the foundational concepts, we're reaping now. So we're not boasting about anything that we're doing. We didn't make that planting. They did. But out of all of it, the foundation of all our lives is Christ. And when we get to that point, you start to look back on your life and go, Lord, you were there the whole time. Like, you were showing me stuff the whole time. I just didn't want to see it, hear it, believe it. And so he already knows it. So yes, sometimes the events that get us to him seem catastrophic. And we're like, well, Lord, if I only believed 5 years ago, but he already knew. Mm-hmm. And then, it seems like, well, why through trauma do we learn? And that's why. It shows that stuff is outside of our control, not in a place of comfort, but in a place of catastrophe. Do oftentimes we find the Lord. And it's not because of catastrophe. It's showing that we're not in control. I don't think it's a meaningless process. I think it has a lot of meaning. And so to those out there that are going through things, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's sex abuse, whether it's child abuse, everything that you're going through, the Lord is not unaware of, and he will give you a way out. Oftentimes ways are provided for you that appear to be a way out, but there's one way. And I know people get offended when they talk about this, but it's not meant to be offensive. It's meant to be the truth. There's a reason. Anything outside of a way is the wrong way. Outside of the truth is a lie. And outside of life is death. It's not gray area with God. There's black and white, which we should appreciate. I find that our getting used to options makes us think that the more options, the better, which I think that's just confusion. And we know the Lord is not the author of confusion. So oftentimes we want directness. I think everyone does want straightforwardness and directness. And sometimes the fear of that is that it's going to rub us the wrong way and have us have to face what we're doing. And once we do that, we really can appreciate the directness of God and the truth. It's not what we interpret it to be, but he's the standard. We are not. And so the sooner that we can appreciate that, we can move forward in our life. But I think all of us have a story, and it's not that one's better than the other. It's that they're purposed for the people that are put in our lives. Just like we didn't pick the family we were born into, the Lord did. And he did that on purpose. It's not an accident. You didn't pick your race. The Lord did. So these things, what are we boasting in? We should be boasting in what God has done and what Jesus has done for us. And that's why he says, this way no man's boasting in what he's done. Because what did we do? We made a mess. It's like children in the kitchen. They mean well, and it's just a catastrophe. It's like the pasta sauce blew up. It's like, look, Mom. And it's like, oh, boy. But the meal gets completed because of the Lord, not because of us. And I think when we all go back to that foundational concept, we can share these stories to sharpen each other, to remind each other, and we often should reflect back on what we were saved from, that we don't get into that judgment seat, no matter what part of our walk we're in, because that would then make us self-righteous, thinking that we did something. So that when the Lord talks about consistent humility, it makes more sense. So I definitely appreciate, I know the audience does, you sharing your testimony, because it's funny how the Lord brings people together from different backgrounds, from different experiences, but I do find the one commonality is experience. Yeah. And to be able to share that with other brothers and sisters who might not even know they're a brother and sister yet. Yeah. But I think one of the dangerous things that people do is try to hide it, try to hide what they were. that's why I freely shared. It's not because I'm bragging about how I was. It was a nightmare, but it's also then giving the glory to God because I didn't save myself. Jamie didn't save himself. Jesus did. That's why all the glory goes to him. We can't try to keep, well, I got myself out of this mess. And oftentimes there's many things that are shown, but then we have to come to the realization we didn't save us. That scripture where it says, an evil spirit goes in search of a dry place, finding none. It comes back to the original house, bringing 7 spirits worse than itself. So when we think that we've cured ourselves, we can't cure ourselves. We can't heal ourselves. Jesus does. When people kick something, you'll notice if you're not filled then with the Holy Spirit, filled with Christ, the trouble that you went through is coming back for you with more that's worse than, that's what it says, the beginning stage of man is worse than the end. When we can humble ourselves and go, God, I need help. I can't do this myself. Then now we're getting filled. Now we're getting filled with living water, and that changes the dynamic. So don't ever think that you're doing it. We're not doing it. I can show you how to make Rice Krispies, and I'll still mess up because I'll give you a broken bowl. So again, the Lord will complete the process that he started in your lives. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, it's funny. I was talking about, if you notice throughout the story, I was talking about loneliness. And when I'd mentioned it, you know, I jumped around trying to find the way, and how I came to this. When people are like, oh, you were this, that, and the other all these years, this, that, and the other, and now all of a sudden you're a Christian, and I'm like, yeah, because Christ is the only thing that filled that void. God was God was that void that was missing in my life. You know, you're talking about filling, making the life fulfilled, filling that water. You know, that was God in my life, was what was missing for so many years. And, you know, I look at, you know, and that's why I can finally feel the way I do. There is no sadness. God filled that sadness into gladness, into glory. And another thing, we were talking with my children, and I want this to be for anybody. I went through all these things, and I got through them. And I had said this to my son not too long ago. He's 14, and he's going through his growth as a young teenage. He's going from a boy to a young man. So he's making those changes. And obviously a lot of what I did kind of had leaked out, even though I tried to hide it as best I can from my family, for they didn't have to see that, but it leaked out, you know, and they would see the anger and the sadness, and then sometimes the tears, and sometimes the screaming. And now we talk about it with my head clear and my head and the Lord with me. And I always remind him, I'm like, don't give up. Never give up. You know, the Lord is always going to be there for you, whether you're not at that point where the Lord, you know, you feel that you believe in Jesus Christ, you believe in God, but you're going to go through these hardships no matter what. You're 14 now. You're going to be going through things in your life. There's always going to be struggle. There's going to be struggle. And, you know, you put your faith in the Lord to help guide you through that struggle, but still you're going to go through that grind, you know, disappointment. You know, you might want to make that team, but you don't, you know, and, you know, the Lord has a reason. So don't just give up. I didn't give up. I tell my kids, don't give up, because there is something there for you, and the Lord has a plan for you.
Amen. And remember something. No one said it was easy, but it's worth it. And don't let the world define you. The world will define you as an addict, a loser, hopeless. That's the world's identity. So, you know, that's Satan. God says you're a child of mine, and that's your identity, not how the world has defined you. And that's oftentimes what people have to understand. When you come to the Lord, you're no longer that child of wrath. You're a child of God, no matter how the world sees you. Well, of course, it's not going to see you once you come into Christ, because now you're against it. And so understand something. The world accepts those that are its, and the Lord accepts everyone. All you have to do is that humility, saying, Lord, I messed up. We're all that prodigal son that went out, misused the funds on all kinds of stuff, and then when he's about to eat the pig food, he goes, what am I doing? My father has servants that are doing better than me, and he goes back humbly. And does God wait till he gets to the house? No, he meets him. The prodigal son's father meets him in the field as he sees his intent. And he gives him, get the ring, have a party. My son who is dead is now alive. And that's what is the opening for all of us. He knows we messed up. We have to understand that we messed up. But once we take that first step, he takes the other ones. So understand that whatever you're struggling with this day, it's not hopeless. Everything in the Lord has purpose. And so when you seek him, even in your darkest hour, don't wait till your darkest hour. If you're just having trouble, ask Jesus. Because I'll tell you, unlike everything else, will fail. The Lord has never failed, nor any of his words. They will all come to pass. So again, that's something you can stand on. The world will let you down. People might let you down. But again, don't have expectations of people. Have expectations of the Lord. So guys, we really appreciate you joining us today. Mr. Morris, thank you for sharing your testimony. It was a blessing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my first time ever sharing my testimony.
Look at the Hope and the Truth testimonies. Well, guys, we'll see you next time on Hope and the Truth. You have a blessed weekend. God bless.
God bless everyone.
I wake up in the morning light, back is gone with the dead of night, Lord, I know you're the one.
We would like to thank you for listening to today's podcast of The Hope and the Truth. You can find our podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. For more information, contact us at theculturalarts.org. You can also find us on faithback.live and Binge Network TV under Healing Hearts with Cultural Arts. Thank you and have a blessed day.